This is Lady Anne, owner of KPNL Radio and hostess of the Caravan Library of Lore, and I support Tessa. As an experiencer myself, I have filed my own reports with them, and the professionalism and heart they have shown my case goes above and beyond. If you have had an experience, I cannot recommend Tessa enough.
Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston Zedmore from Ghostbusters. I want to let you know that Ryan Stacy, he's created the Experiencer Support Association, TESA. You can check them out at www.tesacan.org. Now, they investigate paranormal, UFO, and provide support to experiencers. But you can check them out at, like I said, www.tesacan.org and see for yourself if they're really Ghostbusters. I can tell you this, they are a non-profit organization. Good luck, have fun, and keep it positive.
Good evening. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association. Tessa is a UFO, paranormal, and paracryptid investigation association. We investigate everything belonging to the global phenomenon linked to highly strange and unexplained experiences. We also connect experiencers with other experiencers, creating a safe, positive environment to engage and discuss this phenomenon without judgment, criticism, or retribution. From the land of the white rolling sands, on the southeasterly tip of Georgian Bay, to all of you listening around the world, as we simulcast live on KPNL Radio, we salute you. If you want to go back and listen to our previous episodes, go to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be instantly notified when we are live, not only for these episodes, but every single element Tessa has to offer. On our website, tessacan.org, we have something for everyone. We have support for experiencers, data for independent researchers, and places to advertise for professional partners. This live portion of the show will run for about 45 minutes. We'll have a commercial break and then spend some time answering some of your questions in the comments. The show will continue immediately after on Patreon for our private members, so head over and become a member for the unclassified tier and receive additional content from this episode and so much more for only $7 a month. To all our Patreon members, you are awesome, and thank you for helping us heal the world. All proceeds go back into the mission and will continue to help us create educational content for you and your family. Become a member today by going to patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Also, if you're joining us live on Facebook or Twitter, head over to our youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association if you want comments read out in the chat. We're only answering questions on YouTube, so head on over, hit that subscribe button, and start chatting. If you can't stay for the entire show, don't worry. Every Monday, we will upload the audio file to our podcast network for you to take us on the go. Okay, you ready? Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Tim the Demon Guy has just let me know that my mic was not on. Let's do this one more time. Thank you, team. Thank you, Timmy. Today is Thursday, March 25th, 2021, and I am your host, Ryan Stacy, this evening. Our guest for Season 3, Episode 9 is Scott Wolter. Forensic geologist Scott Wolter is the host of Travel Channel's hit show, American Unearthed, which follows him on his quest to uncover the truth behind historic artifacts and sites found throughout North America and around the world. Scott is also the author of several books, including The Kezington Rune Stone, Compelling New Evidence, The Hooked X, Key to the Secret History of North America, and his new book, Cryptic Code of the Templars in America, Origins of the Hooked X. Scott has been president of the American Petrographic Services Incorporated since 1990 and has been the principal petrographer in more than 10,000 investigations throughout the world, including the evaluation of fire-damaged concrete at the Pentagon following the attacks of September 11, 2001. His latest written book is titled Akhenaten to the Founding Fathers, Mysteries of the Hooked X, and was published in 2013. So, Scott, put on your how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good today. I'm having a little trouble with your audio there. Can you
hear me now?
That's perfect. There we go.
Perfect.
All right.
So you're doing good. You're doing good then, eh?
Yeah, about an hour and a half ago, I just got home with Janet from about a week and a half long road trip, and it's nice to be home. The snow is gone, and spring is coming.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. There's a lot of beautiful days that we've had these last few days here as well.
Yeah.
Great.
And COVID, hopefully, with all the shots, is going to be a thing of the past. Before too long. So that's another reason to be optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so she'll be able to travel more too, which would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into it. What is the Kensington Rune Stone, and has any of your research led you to Canada?
Yes. Well, the Kensington Rune Stone is an artifact. It's a large slab of gray wacky. I have a cast just around the corner here that was found by a Swedish immigrant farmer who was clearing trees in preparation for farming back in the fall of 1898. And he tipped over this 30-year-old tree. Tightly wrapped in the roots was this 202-pound stone. He was doing this with his two oldest sons, who noticed, the younger son actually was the first one to notice that there was an inscription carved on the face and side of the stone that basically chronicles a journey of 30 men from Europe to the central part of the continent in Minnesota, and the stone is dated 1362. That stone came into my laboratory back in 2000. We were asked to do a forensic study to try to determine how old the inscription was. We know the rock is old. The question was, is the inscription, the weathering of the inscription, consistent with the date of 1362, which of course, the controversy was, this is 130 years before Columbus, didn't set foot on the continent that we now call the United States, that already had millions of people living here. So that was the big controversy. And at the time, I knew nothing about it. I did a tombstone study. I compared the weathering of tombstones with the weathering of the inscription, and it was old. Therefore, I concluded it was genuine, and that's when the trouble started. And, I must not have received the memo. I didn't know what the Kensington Rune Stone was at the time. I didn't know there was a sacred paradigm of history, that this is the narrative, and, be damned with you if you dare tread on it, which I unknowingly did. And that's why the problem got so intense. Well, I didn't really handle it very well, because I said, look, if I did something wrong, if I made a mistake, point it out to me and I'll fix it. That wasn't the issue. The issue was they just didn't like the result. Well, tough hop. You know, sometimes we don't get news we don't like. The data is the data, the results are the results. Deal with it. And that didn't sit well with a lot of people. Well, that led me to investigate the who, from where, and why did they come here questions. And that's what I've been doing over the course of the last 15 years. And I think I've got it pretty well figured out. A medieval order of monastic military knights known as the Knights Templar, who had every reason to come over here. They had been put down by the Roman Catholic Church in 1307, just a few decades before the date carved on the inscription. And they came over here, and I have since learned that the Templars' true ideology was compatible with the indigenous people that were already here. They venerated the feminine aspect of the Godhead, which was the true ideology of the Templars. And of course, a lot of people who are Templar experts are going to be surprised and disappointed to hear this, but in fact, it's the truth. The Templars pretended to be Catholic. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer, if you will. And eventually the church figured it out. And that's one of the reasons why I think they arrested, tortured, and burned them. You burn people because you're pissed. And they had committed the ultimate sin as far as the church was concerned by pretending to be aligned with them when in fact they had an ulterior motive. They had an ulterior faith that they practiced in secret. But when they came over here to the natives, they were the native cultures are matriarchal. They understood each other. They formed a deep spiritual bond by sharing rituals, intermarriage. And that's what allowed the Templars to operate on this continent. Basically, they could do whatever they wanted because they're blood brothers. And that term was told to me by a Native American, today. They have their own secret society. They practice what they call the Midday rituals, which are essentially the same as Freemasonry. I'm a Freemason, so I understand the rituals, and I have interacted with the indigenous people, and they've told me all about their rituals. They've also told me about all about their relationship with the Templars. They still know the truth today. The reason nobody has heard about it is because of the genocide that was committed against their people. And so that's really one of the big things that we discovered. And if you stop and think about it, it makes all the sense in the world. It's logical, and it explains, a lot of the questions that I had in the beginning that for some reason a lot of people just didn't bother to ask. Why did they come over here? What happened when they got here? And what was the mission? Well, the mission was to establish a sanctuary, a place where they could live free from the tyranny of the monarchs of Europe and free from the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church. And if you look at our founding fathers, who the medieval Templars handed that obligation onto, they finished the job. We have a separation of church and state in our Constitution for a reason. And last I checked, I think we fought a revolution against a monarchy, right? And so that is why we have a democracy here. And that democracy and our system of government, a lot of people don't realize, is based upon the Iroquois nation's system of government with the separation of powers. And at the top, again, it is matriarchal. I don't think it's a coincidence that building, our Capitol in Washington, D.C., that was desecrated by a bunch of ill-informed people, that the Capitol dome that they went and stood underneath has a goddess at the top, not a dude. Her name is Freedom, in the ancient god Persephone. So I think if you stop and look at this argument that we've been making, the evidence is all around us. It's just that people need to have the eyes to see. And once you do, you can't miss it. How's that?
Hidden in plain sight. And I also noticed that goddess is facing backwards, is she not?
Well, she's facing towards the National Mall. So
okay.
She's facing to the west, I believe. But actually, she's angled a little bit. And I haven't been able to get the exact angle, but I suspect she's probably facing where the sun rises or sets on one of the solstices. It won't be the equinox because that would be east or west. But I think if we measure that angle, I wouldn't be shocked that she's staring at the sun when it sets at a particular day. Most likely, it would be the sunset on the winter solstice, I think. Don't quote me on that, but we haven't checked it yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on, because those types of alignments are all over Washington, D.C. They're actually all over this country, in our cities. And of course, we have a lot of ancient stone sites in this country that have astronomical alignments. People just need to pay attention. They're everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had the opportunity to do any work on any stones from Oak Island?
Oh boy. Well, I have to tell you, I've been invited to be on that show 4 times, and I have declined all 4 times. And the reason is there's nothing on Oak Island. TV show, and all I tell people is enjoy the show. I did go there about 12 years ago. I met with Danny Blankenship, and I said, I want to see this 90-foot stone. And after a couple of days of hemming and hawing, I came to the conclusion there is no 90-foot stone.
Really?
Have you seen it? Has anybody seen it?
No. No.
Neither have I.
Well, that's interesting. I was not expecting that. I was not expecting that answer at all.
I'm sorry, man. You know,
no, that's okay.
Yeah, I have some inside information, and I don't wish any ill will of the brothers or the show. They're doing. Look. It's been one of the most successful cable television shows in history. People are very interested in the subject matter, and I think. You know, I got to be honest with you. I think human beings have a treasure gene, and that as long as there's even 0.5% chance that something might be found, they hang in there. And good, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But I've invested my energy in other places.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Thank you so much. So, kind of switching gears, that might be slightly related, but what is so important about the hooked X?
Well, the hooked X is something that occurs on the Kensington Rune Stone 22 times. The number 22 is very significant to the Templars. I wrote about it in my latest book, Cryptic Code of the Templars. Thank you for mentioning my books. But actually, the latest one I did was published last year, and that's the Cryptic Code. And the hooked X is a symbol that occurs 22 times on the runestone. It also occurs on another controversial runestone found in Narragansett Bay, the Narragansett Rune Stone. It also occurs about 30 times on 3 different stones found at Spirit Pond back in 1971. And basically what it is on these rune stones, it's being used for the letter A, for the A sound. But it's not the runic symbol that everybody expected. And so, of course, this was a problem for the scholars. And, you know, instead of saying, wow, this is interesting, we've never seen this before, maybe we should look into it, they chose to dismiss it and use it as evidence to say that these inscriptions were fake, which was completely unscientific and wrong, frankly. But the hooked X is a sacred symbol that represents symbolically the true ideology of the Templars. And here's the simplest way to explain it, Ryan. If you take an X and you cut it in half horizontally, you end up with a V or a peak at the bottom, which it symbolizes the male, the sword, the phallic, the symbol for the male. When you invert it like this, you end up with the point down. That represents the feminine. And when you combine them together to make an X, you have the allegorical union of male, female, heaven and earth, good, bad, light, dark, this concept of dualism that keep things in balance. Now, the hook on the upper right arm of the V that makes a little V, some people believe is another symbol for a female, perhaps a child. And, you know, one of the things I like to say to people is, have you ever heard of the Holy Trinity? And people will say, sure, I have. And I say, what is the Holy Trinity? They say, well, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then I like to ask them, what's the Holy Spirit? And they sort of hem and haw, and they go, well, it's the Spirit in you. It's really not defined. Well, here's what I think it might be. You have the Father, you got the child. Who's missing?
The mother.
Of course, right? Maybe that's the Holy Trinity. And if we think about it in that context, maybe the hooked X represents the Trinity, the concept of dualism. But I find it interesting that the V is on top, the male is below, and the little v may represent a child, a daughter inside the womb of its mother. And in essence, if you go back and you look at, say, King Tut's tomb or statues of Akhenaten, they're holding the crook and the flail like this, right? And the flail represents Osiris, the crook represents Isis, the female, and the rounded crook represents the eggs of fertility. So really what this symbol means, that goes back to Egypt and beyond, the Templars just adopted it because they inherited this. Well, they embraced the same ideology as the Egyptians. So you have the male, the female, and the continuation, the perpetuation, the literal generation of that ideology and thought. So this elevation of the feminine aspect of the Godhead is symbolized by the hooked X, and was the secret symbol that represented their true ideology that, again, the Native Americans embraced. That's why they were able to get along. They formed a deep spiritual bond, and the Templars were hugely successful over here and eventually passed on the obligation to found this country. Now, since the country was founded, that feminine aspect of the Godhead, due largely to the influence of the Roman Catholic Church, has been suppressed. But the signs, symbols, and tokens that were started by our founding fathers and continued within our gentle craft, even unbeknown to many of my Masonic brothers, continues to this day. Because when I go into lodge, and when I go to lodges all around the country, and in fact around the world, I see those goddess symbols, but the other guys don't know it because it's been lost. But it's carefully veiled and concealed, but will soon be revealed with this research. That's my goal, because we need to have balance. We live in a patriarchal society, due largely to organized religion, and that's not working too well for us. We need to get back to balance. And that's why I really feel it's important to help educate people so they understand the history, and therefore we can hopefully move forward in the future in a better way.
So, no, that's beautiful. Like, my thought went to the Masonic square and compass. I was going to ask if, like, how that would link or compare to the square and compass, because I'm looking at my square and compass over here. Actually, I'm wearing a necklace too, so it's just to demonstrate we have those symbols, but it's in reverse, I guess. So can that compare? Is that the same thing? Like, is there anything in there?
Absolutely. Now,
Okay.
I mean, you know, Ryan, that symbolism is a bottomless well, right? It just goes on and on, multiple levels to all of this. And really, if you take the hooked X and you just slide the symbols up, you end up with the square and compass. There's a lot more to that I could go into. I've written about it in my books. But the symbolism is awesome. And if you're asking me if there is a connection between the most iconic symbol of Freemasonry, which is the compass and square, and the hooked X and the Templars' true ideology, the answer to that question is absolutely yes.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, so let's turn gears again. But I do want to say we normally do a Patreon special, but because these conversations are so in depth, we've only taken a couple of my questions and we've elaborated on that. I'm going to take the opportunity. I'm putting the CEO hat on, and I'm saying that the Patreon special is on hold. We're gonna carry this conversation through for as long as Scott is willing, and we'll just see how far this goes. If that's okay with you.
Let's go, brother. It's going to be fun.
Okay, so switching gears again. Holden. That name has been buzzing a lot in ufology these days. Yeah, I know. That was a left hook. I know. So you can say whatever you need. I just for our listeners, who is he? How is he doing? What is his plan? And is there any, for me and for our listeners, is there any link to what he's planning to Canada? There's a little cultural there.
Well, I had about a 2-hour conversation with Holden last night, and have great conversations. He's a wonderful guy. Holden is somebody who contacted me, oh God, it's got 6-7 months ago, who is with the Department of Defense, and he's working in a sort of a smaller branch of the DoD on the extraterrestrial topic. And basically what they're doing is they have completely changed their approach to the whole question of ETs and unexplained aerial phenomena. And instead of keeping it secret and denying that, aliens exist, they've taken the opposite approach of starting to come forward and sharing with the public that indeed they walk among us. They are here on this planet. They care very much for this planet because it really is one of the shining stars in the universe. It is teeming with life, and but yet it also has a very delicate balance. And there is concern amongst the interstellar community that the ETs would like humans to become more a part of. But we need to do a little bit better job with how we're dealing with things down here. We need to take better care of our planet. We need to take better care of each other. We can do better, plain and simple. And we've had kind of a tough time here the last 50 or so years. And, we have some things that we need to clean up as a species before we can go forward. And, one of the things that I don't think anybody, with a reasonable mind would be shocked to hear is they don't appreciate how we treat each other. The racism, misogyny, the vast differences in the haves and the have-nots. They see us all as one species. And last I checked, we are all one species, regardless of the color of your skin, what religion you have, where you live. All of our blood is red. We all care for our families and our friends. We all want to be happy. And that's a universal axiom, regardless of where you live, what race you are, what sex you are. It just doesn't matter. And so we need to do a better job with that. And I don't think any reasonable person would argue with that.
No. And it's a good philosophy. It's a good point. I mean, it's do good, do good to others as you wish to be done to you. Those sayings.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, no, that's good. That's all all part of it, all part of the plan. And the more that we work together, like you said, the quicker we might have that resolution. And peace is what we want, I guess.
Yeah.
Whatever shape or form.
Yeah, and I think that's really the overriding message that I've been getting, that Holden says is, where they're coming from, and nothing to fear. To tell you the truth, I'm very curious. I'm looking forward to hopefully having an experience where I can interact with these beings. Holden says I already have, and I asked him what he meant by that, and I told him the story about this woman that disappeared on me at the Newport Tower and couldn't possibly have walked away, and appeared out of nowhere, spent 45 minutes to an hour with me, and then at a critical moment, literally disappeared. So I didn't say much about it for a number of years, but I've talked about it more and more because, I guess I was kind of worried about what people would think, but then I got to the point where I really don't care what people think. The truth is the truth, and I'm just going to tell it. So, but he said that experience I had could very well have been an ET. So, if so, it was really a good experience. It was a beautiful woman that showed up when I was doing an experiment at the Newport Tower. She took interest in it. We talked for 45 minutes. She took a picture of me and then literally
What did you talk about?
Pardon me?
What did you guys talk about?
Well, I was at the Newport Tower and I was documenting this illumination event that happened on the winter solstice, which also happens to be my birthday, where the south window of the Newport Tower, and the Newport Tower is a 2-story stone and mortar structure that sits at the top of the hill in Newport, Rhode Island, that is first talked about in the first governor of Rhode Island's will, Benedict Arnold, in 1677. He said, my stone windmill. And a lot of people think that it's a windmill, and this is ridiculous. But in any case, on the winter solstice, it's an observatory because it has dozens of astronomical alignments that are solar, lunar, Venus alignments, the alignments with stars, certain constellations. It's an observatory. And this is something that was very important to the Templars. And through this observatory, they were able to, back in the 14th century and before that, able to calculate longitude. But anyway, on the winter solstice, the south window creates a light box as the rising sun passes through that window. That box of light goes through the west window, and then it slowly migrates down and illuminates an egg-shaped keystone, the only true keystone on the inside of the tower in the 8 arches, at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, which is an important time of medieval monastic prayer. And then from then on, the sun rises again. The march to spring begins when we have new life. So they documented the annual procession of the sun throughout the year, so they could, it's basically a calendar and a clock as well. But anyway, so I was there, and I had made arrangements with the city. I had the key to the fence to get in. I got my camera all set up, and I was going to take pictures as the light box moved to the egg. And I got set up. I took my first picture, and somebody behind me said, "What are you doing in there?" And I turned around, and here was this young woman standing there, probably 30-something. And she's kind of looking at me like, "Well, you're not supposed to be in there." And I said, "Well, it's a long story." And she said, "I've got time." And I said, "Well, you see that light box and the egg." And I told her the whole story. And she said, "I've got to stay for this." So she stayed there. I took my pictures. I explained the research, the Templars coming to America. I talked about the 2-story round churches they built in Europe, and this is an exact replication of that. And then, 45 minutes later, when the egg illuminated, that was that was one of those magic moments when something happens that you know you're on the right track, right? And for me, that was an epiphany moment. And so, of course, I was really excited, right? And I said, woohoo! And she got it. She understood the significance. And she said, you know what? Congratulations. That's great. She said, would you like me to take a picture of you with that in the background? I said, great. I had a backup camera. I gave it to her. She snapped a photo, and then she gave me the camera back. I said, thanks. And I said, just a second. I'm going to take another picture. I want to get the light box coming off. I turned around. I snapped another picture. I turned around back to her. Gone.
It's gone. Wow.
3 to 5 seconds to take the picture. I'd been taking them for 45 minutes. And then I was looking at the trees, trying to see, you know, maybe she walked away. I remember when I turned around and she was gone, I thought to myself, well, that was rude. We were getting along pretty good. A minute, I just went, oh my God. And I got this cold chill that went down my back. She didn't walk away. She couldn't have. She vanished.
She must say, yeah. Interdimensional being.
I don't know. But, you know, the funny thing is that it's right in the middle of town, right? And nobody showed up that whole time she was there. And that never happens. It was just her and I for those 45 minutes. And I think about that all the time, and I just can't explain it. I don't know what to tell you, but it happened.
It kind of segues into
the grand encampment.
Yeah, so what I wanted to give some background here. So I know you're a busy guy and you talk to a lot of people all over the place, but just as a recap, when we started having our conversation on Twitter, it was originally me asking you for your interpretation of the symbol here on the left. And just for our listeners and just as a recap, I explained to you at the time that this was given to me in some sort of a dream state or vision state. And I was asking for your opinion because there was a Masonic symbolism here. And you had referenced the Scottish Rite encampment circle. Do you remember?
That's on the right. That's on the right. Yep.
Yeah, it's on the right. So my question for you, I just have this up for visuals for the audience, is if you could explain to me and our listeners what that symbol is and the symbolism behind it.
Are you talking about the one on the left?
No, the one on the right. The one on the left is the one that was given to me, and I'm hoping that in real time, your explanation for the one on the right will resonate to stuff I've already talked about on the one on the left. Right. This is a science experiment.
Yeah, well, the one on the right is a symbol of what we call the Grand Encampment in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and that is sort of the layout of the 32nd degree. Now, I can't really go into too much of it, but I will tell you that one of the things that we learn is about procession of the equinoxes. Are you familiar with that?
Sort of.
Okay. Well, basically, it's really an important concept. And the procession of the equinoxes serves as the backbone of the history of humanity. And if you stop and think about it, and you look at it historically, it makes a lot of sense. And basically what it is that on the morning of the spring equinox every year, ancient cultures would look to the east prior to the sunrise. And the zodiacal belt with the 12 primary constellations that you see represented on both of these diagrams passes through the eastern sky. So on the morning of the spring equinox, you will see one of the 12 primary constellations on the horizon that the sun will then rise through, and that is considered sacred. Now, because of something called precession, which has to do with the Earth's wobble, it slightly wobbles. And what happens is that zodiacal belt that encircles the Earth very slowly rotates. like a very slow running clock. And it takes 26,000 years for all 12 constellations to cycle through one time. If you divide 26,000 by 12, you get about 2,160 years, which is the average length of time that a zodiacal constellation will be in the eastern sky, and then it sets below the horizon and the next one cycles in. Now, they're not equally divided because it depends on the size of the constellation. Some are big, some are small, some are average size, but the average length is 2,160 years. Now, I'm going to explain something to you that will make a lot of sense after I tell you. You've probably heard of a guy by the name of John the Baptist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically depicted with wearing a wool shawl, carrying a shepherd's crook, a lamb in his arm or one in his feet. That is because he was the final pharaoh, the final grand master, the final astronomer priest of the age of Aries the Ram, which was a very small constellation. It only lasted about 1,400 years. And then he initiates the new king, the new grand master, the new pharaoh, if you will, who was born of the Lamb of God. What does that mean? It means he was born in the final 4 years of the age of Aries the Ram, and then he is initiated by John the Baptist to become the Fisher King, because he is now, and who is he? Can you guess?
I don't want to guess and be wrong.
Jesus. Right?
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah.
Are you saying Jesus was a Mason?
Yeah, sure was.
I always thought so, based on the teachings within Scottish Rite. I'm 32nd degree Scottish Rite, so this is.
Oh, okay. So you
this
know
is,
that.
Yeah. Well,
he absolutely was. John the Baptist, according to church doctrine, baptized Jesus. Well, if you've been in the 32nd degree, you know what the baptism is. That's an initiation. So John the Baptist initiated Jesus, who became the new leader of his people, new king, the new grand master of the age of Pisces the fish. That's why they call him the Fisher King. That's why the symbol of Jesus is the fish, right? So how long has it been since Jesus? About 2,000 years, right?
Give or take.
Yeah. And what have we been hearing about in the lead up to 2012? The end of the Mayan calendar. The end of the world is going to happen, right? No. All it is was the end of the age of Pisces the fish, where the reign of the Fisher King ends. Now, not only was 2012, according to the Mayan calendar, other cultures' calendars say 2020 or 2021 right now is the end of the age of Pisces. But not only is it the end of the age of Pisces, but right now what we are living through is the end of the 26,000 year long cycle. And what happens when one cycle ends?
A new one begins.
Right on, brother. So what's happening right now is we are living through one of the most profound moments in human history, and nobody understands it. And we are transitioning into a new age, but a new great year, as they call it, because the 12 constellations are the great months. But we are beginning the great year that is 26,000 years long. Now, if you believe in prophecies, which I'm not really sure what to think about them, other than there are people in the past who make predictions about what happened in the future, and they're right. One of the predictions about the beginning of the new great year is it would be a time of great turmoil. And that's happening right now. So it's kind of interesting when you look at it. Now let's go back the other way. If we go back 1400 years from Jesus and John the Baptist, you end up with a guy by the name of Akhenaten, who's holding the crook and the flail. The flail herds the bulls, the followers of Taurus, the old religion. The crook herds the rams, the sheep of Aries, the new religion. And crossed on his chest represented his attempt to unite the two religions. But it failed because Taurus is a huge constellation. It lasted 2,700 years, a long time. And that this Apis bull culture religion became deeply ingrained in the people. And they didn't want to change because Akhenaten was an astronomer priest who knew it was time to change the religion from polytheistic dualism to monotheistic dualism. Dualism, does that ring a bell? Remember? So his people were driven out. The followers of the new religion, the Aryans, were driven out. That is what we now call the Exodus. And those people ended up in Israel. So I think you can kind of see how procession plays a key role. By the way, there's a huge debate that's been raging for a long time about the age of the Sphinx and the pyramids. And a brilliant geologist by the name of Robert Schoch came out with a paper about, it's going to be 20 years ago or so now, that said that the Sphinx was much older than the Egyptologists who said it's somewhere around 4,000 to 5,000 years old. Robert said it's more like 12 to 13,000 years old. And of course, he received a lot of criticism when he came out with that. And he and I have talked about receiving criticism for just doing our damn jobs. And a lot of people that don't like the results and the implications. Well, that's not my problem. As I said before, the data is the data, the results are the results, and you just have to live with it. But as it turns out, and I said this to him, I said, Robert, do you realize that the head of the Sphinx, well, he knew this, that it's now the head of a pharaoh, but in the past, it was the head of a lion that's been recarved. And that when it was made, the primary constellation of the zodiac was Leo the lion. And that's is looking due east at itself, as above, so below. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Oh, yeah.
And as it turns out, Leo was the primary constellation at the exact same time that Robert Schoch's geology says the Sphinx was carved. That's called science. So pretty cool stuff, huh?
That is very cool stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm learning so much. Like my Masonic brain is in over here, and it's I'm relating to a bunch of things that we can't talk about, but it's interesting. So since we are extending this episode, I'll just kind of wrap it up with this, and then we'll do our commercial break.
Okay.
With you looking at this symbol now, what do you see? What does it remind? I know it reminds you of that symbol, but does anything pop out to you that looks familiar?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things. Well, first of all, you've got 12 tents here, which probably represent the 12 constellations of the zodiac. You also have a yin-yang stylized black and white symbol behind the cross. And that is, is the black and white Masonic pavement, right, that we see in our lodges and in our temples, and that represents dualism, opposites that keep things in balance, right? See the 4 quadrants of a Templar cross, which also represent the 4 corners, if you will, of the zodiac, of the zodiacal great year. There is a certain symbol that represents the procession cycle, and it looks just like that with those four arms of the Red Cross. On the inside, we see a seal of Solomon inside of a circle, which represents a lot of things. Again, you have the two triangles, the inverted triangles, and that's dualism. If you push them apart so that the points meet, you end up with an X. You know, the basis of the hooked X, and then you have the cuneiform symbol in the middle, and you have the 6 points around the seal of Solomon. So there's a lot going on there, and even the symbols within each of the tents. If I put my glasses on, I can see them better. But yeah, I see a triangle inside the seal of Solomon in one of them. I see it. We see the two in the red tent and the blue tent. You see the up and down triangles. A jigsaw puzzle piece. You got a whole bunch of interesting symbols. I don't know what every one of them are, but I can guess.
So,
it's a symbol of perfection, and that can only be achieved upon death.
So it's interesting that you shared all that, and I appreciate that, because that validates some of the research that I've done. So what I've noticed, and again for context, this was given to me as a vision, and I just created this, and then I've been trying to work on it ever since. The Experiencer Support Association, TESA, was drafted by basically reflecting off of this symbol. So the TESA is where the Experiencer Support Association stemmed from. That's where these ideas have come from looking at this map, as I'm calling it. Cool. But I've noticed the plumb rule, the level, and the square, which is the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry.
Mm-hmm.
I've also noticed
on the top here. I see it. Yep.
So I've also noticed that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 black chairs and 5 colored chairs. These symbols represent different types of sciences, which relate to the 7 liberal arts and sciences.
Yep.
And then I don't know if you're familiar with the Eastern Star, the female fraternity.
Oh yes, I am.
The color orientation of these chairs, the red, blue, green, yellow, and white, form the Eastern Star.
Yes.
And the symbols that are within there are actually symbols for the elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit.
Yep.
So on top, that was just me doing some research on my own by trying to understand the symbolism behind familiar objects that I've seen before. And then with you explaining all that stuff about the encampment symbol, and then now us putting pieces together, what is your opinion on how or why I received that image, and for it to make all this sense right now, and why this guy, little old nothing in Canada?
Well, I think it's called synchronicity, and I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, brother. That sometimes this, when you go through your Masonic journey, as you know, when you go through the Blue Lodge and you've been through the Scottish Rite, you get a lot that's thrown at you, and there's a lot of symbolism, a lot of meaning, moral lessons, teachings that are embedded within it, as well as history. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack in these degrees, and that's why we say, if you want to seek additional light, you go ahead and pursue these if you are so inclined. So I just think it's great stuff, and the same symbols that we all see, like in Freemasonry, or even just in in the secular world that we all live in, different symbols mean different things to different people. So when I look at them, I might see one set of things. You look at them and you see something else. There's going to be some overlap. We're going to see some of the same things, but every person's journey of learning, of discovery is different. And that makes it cool. And then when you get together like we are right now, when you talk about those symbols, you're going to learn from me and I'm going to learn from you. And that's what it's all about.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to pause right here, but we'll continue after a message from our professional partners. Also, if you're listening to this live on KPNL Radio or on a future podcast, head over to youtube.com/Experiencer Support Association to see the video that's going with this audio. Remember, you are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association, and we'll be right back.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're alone in the universe.
My mission is to assist and help those experiencing this phenomenon in such a way that they're able to continue and live with it, and also in a way that it can be measured, quantified, and reinforced within today's society, so that way it can be accepted and no longer viewed in a negative way. One thing that I do value in people is the ability to sense and feel when something is right and when something is wrong. That is a natural ability that we all share. Now, when we combine that with the paranormal and ufological abductions or visits, I have this sensation that these abilities are connected. Not everyone can sense, not everyone can feel. However, those who can are typically connected with something that we cannot explain. And part of my research is not just to investigate the experience, but it's also to understand and study the experiencer to find out what they have in common with other experiencers, to try to figure out what the actual makeup is in order to be on that spectrum.
There's a lot of it happening all over the world, and I do not know of any other study that is focusing on the individuals as people, only the phenomenon.
Okay, welcome back. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. If you're enjoying the episode so far, head over to patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association and join the unclassified tier for only a few bucks a month. Your membership will get you at least an extra half hour of this conversation. Actually, that's a lie because we canceled that. But there's a bunch of other perks for becoming an insider. Also, if you've experienced an unexplained event involving the paranormal, UFO, extraterrestrials, dogman, or any other paracryptid, head over to tessacan.org/reporting system. The more reports we get, the more we will understand the phenomenon and how it affects our people. But the others who have already reported, that example that proves that we are making a difference. And if it wasn't for these reports, we would not be able to do what we do, and for that, we thank you. I am still here with Scott Wolter. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing good. I thought that was a lot of fun. What's next?
All right, still got gas in the tank. Right on. Okay, so I'm going to get a little personal if I can. How has being public about Freemasonry impacted your mission? I personally gotten slack from Grand Lodge from being open about it. I've been called Illuminati, but I'm still proud to be a ufologist, a Mason in ufology. So how has that been for you? I guess in your journey in expressing and being so open publicly about it.
Well, you know,
Uh-oh.
it's all been very positive. One of the things that I have, I think they appreciate the research that we're doing. I think they, they watch the shows and they think that we're doing a credible job, and that's important to me. And I don't want to embarrass myself. I still do my professional work, and it's important that that I maintain my credibility as a forensic geologist. I do a lot of sensitive work, so can't be involved in things that are too silly. But on the other hand, too, one of the things, my experience was my father was a Mason, and I didn't find out until the day after he died when they gave me the ring that he wore on his finger. And I went home and I said, "Mom, what is this?" She said, "Oh, your dad was a Shriner." And I said, "What's a Shriner?" She said, "Well, he was a Mason." I'm like, "Well, what's a Mason?" But that conversation was many years ago, and I just sort of let it go. But when I got into the Rune Stone and I started researching the Templars and everything associated with it, Freemasonry came into the picture pretty quickly. So I studied Freemasonry extensively, and there's definitely a connection between Templarism and Freemasonry, as you know. And I was very impressed by what I learned about the craft. And I actually probably would have joined many years earlier, but when I was doing American Unearthed in the beginning, I wanted to maintain my credibility. I didn't want people to think that I was being a shill for Masonry and that I was biased, because I can't be biased. But eventually I got to a point where I said, did the people that support me care if I'm a Mason? No. And the people that don't support me, do I care what they think? No. And then I said, let's do it. So I did. And I have to say, Ryan, the other thing that if there's one thing that maybe some of the brothers tell you how many people have come up and said, well, I'm really interested in Freemasonry, and I'm just waiting to be invited. And I say, look, you don't have to be invited. All you have to do is knock on the door. And I think the other thing that has hurt us is many of our older brothers that come from a different era were very secretive about the craft, and they never talked about it. And don't ask me about it. It's not, and that's just not the right thing to do. We have to be open, because as I said, I think the world would be better off if we had more Masons, especially in government, because you and I both know that if we had more Masons in government on both sides of the aisle, we would have a higher probability of people making decisions in the interest of the greater good than the personal good. And I really believe, you got to remember something. Our country was founded by Freemasons. Our Constitution is a Masonic document, whether people realize it or not. And the tenets that people brag about it all the time are Masonic in nature. So why wouldn't we want more Masons?
You set up my...
If I'm guilty of that, then so be it.
Yeah, no worries, and I appreciate that too. Because like for me, I like to be open about it, so that way, I believe I'm doing good. And if I'm doing good, and I'm mentioning Masonry, it's going to be perceived good when there's a lot of misconceptions where it's perceived negative. So it's kind of live in the world you wish to be in kind of type philosophy. So I appreciate that.
Let's be real, Ryan. The reason that we get a bad rap is largely due to ignorance. In other words, people that don't really understand what we're about. And the truth is, and this is a tough truth for some people, the Roman Catholic Church doesn't like Freemasonry. They want to control the message about deity, about God, about Jesus, and all of this. They have a particular message that they want to, convey, and they want to control it. And we don't follow that, that script. You can be a Christian to be a Mason, but you can be a Buddhist, you can be a Muslim, you can be Jewish. Our Native American brothers take their obligation on an eagle feather. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, regardless of what religion you practice, what you call your deity, we're all talking about the same thing, right? And as you know, when we meet in lodge, we focus on things that unite us, not divide us. That's why we don't talk about politics and we don't talk about religion when we're in lodge, because it divides people. And I think that's a good policy.
So you set up my next question quite well by mentioning we needed more people, Masons in government. My question next was basically, are there any other brethren specifically in ufology making a significant impact in disclosure? Do you know of any?
Let me think about that. Randall Carlson, do you know Randall?
Nope, but I'm writing her down.
You better write him down. I'm sure a lot of listeners know who Randall Carlson is. But he's another geologist and researcher, but he's also open-minded to the whole UFO topic. Brother Tim Hogan, I don't know if you know who Tim is. I don't know if these are big power players in the UFO community, but we have had many discussions about this, and they're both open-minded, to this phenomena. And I mean, let's face it, if the government is coming out and they're saying that they're here and they're sharing information about them, there's something to it. And I claim to be an expert, but I can tell you that I have been shared enough information that I have been so moved and compelled to not only accept it, but to support the effort to help educate people and encourage people to get out there and learn on their own. I have talked to many, many people who have had experiences in one way or another, whether they've been abducted, whether they've seen UFOs, they've seen extraterrestrials themselves. A lot of people, including people. My father was an airline pilot, and there are, people that are in the airline industry that have seen a lot of strange things in the sky. And this isn't a coincidence. I mean, there's just way too much smoke for there not to be a fire burning someplace. And so I think it's time for people to be aware of this, to try to learn about it, and to realize there's nothing to fear. But we have work to do as a species. So that's the message. And I think we're up to it. I really do.
Well, I appreciate that. The reason why I was asking is because there's a rumor floating about, or a suspicion. We know that with To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge he's a Freemason. Mellon, his grandfather was a Mason, so we're not sure if he's a Mason yet. And there was some questioning whether or not Lou Elizondo was a Mason. So we were just, our small circle was just kind of wondering if that was true. It doesn't really make a difference. But it would kind of shed some light in terms of trusting the information if it was being delivered by a Masonic figure. Have you heard anything along those lines, whether or not Lou may be Mason?
Not really. What I have heard is that there are connections, and I'm still working on them, with the craft and with this whole ET extraterrestrial phenomena. So, and there are some things that I have seen that suggest a connection, knowledge of numbers and some of the more esoteric aspects that would tend to suggest that there's more going on in the universe than just us.
Mm-hmm. So it's all over the place. So, in your opinion, what is the Masonic connection to ET?
Well, I think what you can do is you can go back and actually look at some of the Bible is an interesting book because on one level it can be read by people and interpreted a certain way, but if you're initiated, you realize that there's another level to the Bible where many of the people in the Bible, the events that occur, the lessons that are taught, some of the verses are allegorical, that there's another message beyond the message that it appears to be. And in some cases, the Bible actually will talk about, some people say extraterrestrial events, referring to ETs. I know that the mathematical concepts, things like the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence, which is part of Freemasonry, is also part of the extraterrestrial phenomena, and that there's other numbers that have to do with some of the science and technology that and I don't claim to be an expert on it at all. I'm just beginning to learn about this. But some of the concepts in Freemasonry dovetail with some of the science that has to do with these other phenomena. So I'm a student that's just beginning this journey from a scientific standpoint, but it is eminently fascinating. That I will tell you.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. Those are all my questions. Do you have any questions for me at all? Will I look to see if our guests have any questions?
Well, I don't really have any questions. I guess one question I would have you pursued the Yorkright branch yet?
Yeah, so I've received the Royal Archmason degree. I'm waiting to be initiated into the cryptid rite.
Okay.
So I've got a 32nd degree Scottish Rite. I'm also Eastern Star, and I am a junior warden in my lodge right now.
Oh, very good. You're going through the line. Good for you.
Yeah.
In the cryptic degrees, There is one in particular where I made a discovery when I went through that was directly connected to the Kensington Rune Stone. And what I can tell you is that that degree opened my eyes to the allegorical messages that are embedded within the Kensington Rune Stone inscription that only a deeply initiated medieval monk would be aware of, and specifically of the Enochian legends, the legend of Enoch. And I will just tell you this, the first part of the Kensington Rune Stone message says 8 Gotalanders and 22 Northmen on this acquisition business / taking up land from Vinland far to the west. We had a camp near 2 shelters, 1 day's journey north from this stone. Now, in the degree, the select master degree of the Cryptic Council, how the secret vault, the 9th arch, was built by the 3 Grand Masters. And then in the lecture, I heard this, and the other 8 arches were built by 22 men from Gebel. And I went, 8 and 22, those are the first 2 numbers on the Kensington Rune Stone. And I didn't hear another thing after that. But I got the degree book. And of course, I witnessed the degree. And I will tell you this, that all 8 numbers that occur on the Kensington Rune Stone in sequence occur in that degree in sequence, as well as a number of other things. Now, you're a Scottish Rite Mason, right?
Yes.
How much is 8 plus 22?
30.
30. Plus 2 shelters.
32.
1 day's journey north from this stone.
33.
Coincidence?
No, that's just too yeah.
Good answer, and the right answer, because none of this is coincidence, and that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. The 8 and the 22, 10 men, red from blood and death, 14 days journey from this island. It all goes back to you, right? I mean, if you think about it, one of the reasons why we joined Freemasonry, why some people join churches, why people go on spiritual journeys to try to seek enlightenment, to try to answer those big questions in life. And, you know, at the end of the day, it all comes back to you, right? And the novel concept of the 2 words, I think, that really say it all: know thyself. But here's something that's very interesting and might be another coincidence. Do you know how many bones are the average number of bones in a human spinal column?
I would say 30, 32, maybe 33.
How did you know 32 was the number?
I just had this this feeling.
This is amazing, yeah. Well, so we have 32, and there's the 33rd degree, which is an honorary thing that is bestowed upon very few of our brethren, right? It's the highest level, the ones that, you know, are the most enlightened, right? So what is the analog to that 33rd degree in our human bodies? The skull, right? At the top of the spinal column, right? I'm sure that's a coincidence. Now, here's another one. Do you know how many bones there are in the human skull?
I'm going to say 32. 30. 4?
22.
22. Okay.
You know how many bones are in your cranium?
8?
8.
Or the yeah.
So that means there's how many in your face?
3 then, I guess. Or
14.
well, 30. 14 in your face.
8 in your head for a total of 22.
Right. Okay.
I'm sure that's another coincidence, right?
Hmm. My math is off on me tonight. But no, yeah, I see what you're saying. So what you're saying is, well, we all know that the numbers are significant.
Yep.
And those numbers and synchronicity, we can get into numerology, we can get into a whole bunch of things. So my question, I guess for you to come back onto that is, how far have you journeyed in Masonry?
Well, I have gone through the Scottish Rite, 32nd degree. I have gone through all 3, the Royal Arch, the Cryptic Council, the chivalric degrees. I have been knighted as a Sir Knight. I have done several side orders and some other things. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. I am absolutely enjoying my Masonic experience. I have not gone through the line at all because I'm just not around to be able to do that. You need to make a commitment. You need to be there. And unfortunately, I just have not had the time to do it. I feel like my contribution to Freemasonry is to, be out there like I am right now to help enlighten people, to educate, to do research, and share that knowledge. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your service. So let's hop into the questions here. So UFOs on the Level, which is a brilliant name, by the way, he asks, has Holden given you a mission?
Well, he hasn't said this is your mission and should you choose to accept it. But yes, I mean, my job is to do exactly what I'm doing here, to talk to people about this project of disclosure, to first of all, do my due diligence to make sure that whatever I talk about, I'm comfortable talking about, that I have vetted it, that I'm comfortable that it's legitimate, and only then will I talk about it in public. I have been so compelled on the topic of ETs and extraterrestrials, and we've talked a little bit about what that's about, and really that's all I'm trying to do. I don't profess to be an expert on the subject matter. I'm not. Although I'm a quick study, I've learned an awful lot, and I feel comfortable with what I know. And I have to say that I'm honored and humbled by the fact that Holden and the people that he works with have chosen me to help them in this mission. There's a lot of other people out there too that are doing the same type of work. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get the word out to the public, and mm-hmm. I have to say it's really been going quite well. People that don't believe in something or they don't want to accept the extraterrestrial phenomena, that's their choice. But I'm actually quite surprised at the number of people that really don't come out and say anything, but when you bring the subject up, they light up and they're like, wow, really? Yeah, well, you know what? And then they have a story to tell. So mm-hmm. It's actually gone really, really well. I think there's a lot of people out there that have experienced something and have an inkling, if you will, or they're firm believers. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. And in a way, there's kind of an analog here to Freemasonry. And I've made this argument before, and you know this, Ryan, that you can't truly learn anything new until you realize that you don't know it all, right? People that mm-hmm. know right, have an answer to everything. You can't teach them anything because they don't listen, because they already know it all, right? And that's kind of what's going on here with this ET phenomena. It's a humbling thing to realize that we're not the only ones here, right? Humans are not the end all. We're not the smartest ones in the universe. In fact, we got a long way to go. We are, they look at us as, we need to up our game. We have a ways to go, and that's humbling in a way when you stop and think about it. That we're stuck on this planet for the most part, but there are other worlds out there. There are other beings. There are other galaxies. I mean, my gosh, just look at the numbers. There has to be other life out there, and there is. And what the message I've been getting is that they want us to join the interstellar community. And, I think that sounds really cool, but we got to get our own act together here on this planet before we're really ready to branch out in a big way.
Yeah, no, I agree. That kind of that might be the answer to Christopher Luhman's question. He's asking when we'll be presented with the evidence. So I guess that's theory and all this good conversation, but is there a timeline on when that smoking gun will be fired, I suppose?
Well, let me ask you this. What is the smoking gun? The government has a number of pretty compelling videos and information about the phenomena. So I guess, in this case, I've seen a lot of the videos. I've seen some other things, and there is some good evidence that's already out there, and there's more to come. So, and really, it just depends on what compels a person to be so moved to accept something as real. I mean, do you have to see it? I will also tell you that there is a very famous person, a very bright person who's been on the ET phenomena for a long time, Dr. Stephen Greer, who, if you want to see some of his videos, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind and Unacknowledged, I was really impressed by what I saw there. But he leads people in what he calls CE5 experiences, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind experiences, where you get a group of like-minded people and you can communicate with the ETs. And it was actually explained to me the way they do it, and it made a lot of sense, because what my understanding is, they communicate telepathically. They can talk verbally, but they actually prefer the telepathy as far as communication. That's how they operate their ships. That's how they communicate. Now, the way it was explained to me is, if you get a group of like-minded people that are all in for the experience, you can go to a quiet place, and just concentrate. Use your brain. And this explanation I heard was really good. It basically said, think about being on Google Earth and, zoom into a place, your house, your work, out in the wilderness someplace, and zoom in on that spot and mentally think about that spot, where you are, and then scroll out, right? So that you're looking at the Earth from a wide view on Google Earth, and then zoom back down mentally, and then zoom back up and zoom back in. And if everybody is on the same plane, they will tap into it. And in one of the videos I saw, they showed up and they joined the group.
That's in the videos, though. Have you ever participated in the exercise?
I have not yet, but I've been promised that I will. So if and when that happens, I'll be glad to tell you about it. It has not happened, but in theory, in principle, it makes sense to me. And you know, if I focus in on something, I concentrate real hard. I'm sure I can do it, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity, and we'll see what happens.
No, it's interesting because we in Tesla we call it human initiated contact. So the CE5 is the Hynek classification scale. We call it something different, but the whole idea is, again, collective consciousness, using your mind.
Collective consciousness, right.
Yeah, using your mind in order to do that. So Tesla is actually, we have just a little shameless plug here. We have an expo coming up, hopefully, if COVID allows it, here in Canada, called Interconnected. And what it's supposed to be is a UFO paranormal retreat. And the concept around that is to bring everybody together. So through my research and my investigation, I could actually observe like-minded people doing a protocol to initiate contact, you know, and to see for myself if that phenomenon could truly happen and manifest in real time. So I'm actually creating an environment where that experiment could happen. Open invitation if you want to come to Canada, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Maybe get you on as a speaker. Who knows?
Well, let's see what happens as we go forward. I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but I'm half Canadian. My mother was born and raised in Lindsay, Ontario, Canada. It's up near Peterborough, cottage country. Are you familiar with it?
I went to college in Peterborough. I know exactly where that is.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know, you ever heard of the Scugog River?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we used to go fishing there and swimming, and I loved every summer when I was a kid growing up, we went up to Canada to visit my grandparents, and I love it. In fact, I was thinking of getting dual citizenship right before COVID, and but I love Canada. Unfortunately, you guys are pretty locked down right now, so the border's still closed, right?
Yeah, it's still closed. But
can you travel between provinces yet?
Yeah, we can still travel within.
Oh, you can?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean to other provinces in Canada?
I think so. I have to check. It changes every day, but as far as I know, we can still fly internationally. I believe so.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, you invite me up here. If I'm available, I'll be there. You don't have to ask me twice to go to Canada.
Well, I'm writing that down as a reminder, and I'm saving this video as as evidence. And we'll definitely talk about that in the future. I appreciate that. Another question popped up that kind of changes gears here. Julie Welchel, sorry if I get your last name wrong. Scott, how do you hypothesize the knowledge of astrological alignments came to the ancient American peoples who built the earthworks? Did they learn directly from the phenomenon?
Well, that's a great question, Julie, but that's a tough one to answer because obviously we can't talk to those people. All we have to look at is, the handiwork that they left behind. But there's no question that they are astronomically aligned and they are amazingly precise. And I think one of the things about the indigenous people that impresses me the most is that when you study their ancient earthworks, the amount of mathematics, geometry, and astronomy that is incorporated into these earthworks, those three buzzwords I just said should mean something to you, Ryan, because they are also found in Freemasonry. And people don't know this, but the Native Americans practice their own brand of Freemasonry. It's called the Midday. And it was that native form of Freemasonry that allowed the Templars, when they came here, to bond and at a deep spiritual level with their native brothers. And they met in rituals because they practice essentially the same form of Freemasonry. They have a third degree ritual that's essentially the same. And, they have handshakes, they have signs and colors of recognition, symbols, signs, symbols, and tokens that are basically the same. So one of the great tragedies, I think, of American history is not just how we treated the indigenous people, but how we just completely blew it in realizing the opportunity we had to learn from them, because they have a wealth of knowledge, and not just how to survive in the wilderness, but about math, geometry, astronomy, as I said. But these earthworks also beg the question, and I've talked to many of our indigenous friends and asked them about extraterrestrials, and they just go, "Oh yeah, you mean the sky people? We know all about them."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is one of the other things that has really impressed me and persuaded me, frankly, because for a long time they really weren't interested in talking with people like us because of the way they were treated. But they're just like anybody else. If you treat them with dignity and with respect, and hey, how about try treating them the way you want to be treated? You'd be surprised what you get back. And I can tell you that they have been extremely kind and have shared a lot of knowledge with me. And I really haven't, dove too deep into the extraterrestrial subject matter with some of my indigenous friends, but I plan on doing it. I've scratched the surface with them, and boy, they're actually quite ready to talk about it, because I want to believe that I've earned their trust. So there's a wealth of knowledge there, and maybe these earthworks that Julie was asking about, maybe there's a connection. Maybe there was some shared knowledge. Maybe there was help. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. We definitely need some answers. We need to go back in time and get some answers, because that'll answer everything for us too. But that's the thing, like I said earlier with disclosure, like I agree with you that the answers are already here. I believe that it's already been disclosed, and so many people have either missed the mark or have that certain line of greed, or it's just not good enough. The expectation, they want more.
Yeah.
I personally are sitting on some declassified documents here on the Canada side that have been given to like countless researchers in Canadian ufology, but nobody's ever gone through them. And I'm finding information from documents that everyone's written books from the last 50 years on that bring us information that's never been mentioned before. So there's a lot, because I'm a private investigator by trade, so I'm looking at it kind of from an investigator perspective instead of a researcher. So I guess my talking point again too is that I feel like it is connected. We have all the information we need, and because we're separated and we're trying to have these different conversations and theories, it takes moments like this where we're able to bring our experience together on these topics. So we need more of this. We need more people to have a roundtable and discuss these topics, and maybe we'll have some answers too.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In my experience has been, I hosted the television show by myself. My name is on the cover of my books. People might think that I do this in a vacuum, and it's all me, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I have, my wife, my kids, my friends, my colleagues, my Masonic brothers, fans that contact me with helpful information. And the point I'm trying to make is that when like-minded people work together, you get 10 times further down the track than you working in a vacuum, right, by yourself. Some people are very territorial with their research and they keep it tight. There are some instances where you should do that, but I've always found that when I share the knowledge and I talk to people that I respect, that are smarter than me, I mean, you know, you want to learn something, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, and you're going to learn. And so it's this, you know, working with like-minded people and everybody sharing and having conversations is how you really get where you need to be a lot faster. And, you know, the other thing that we talked about, which is an interesting question, is what is truth? How much evidence do you need to prove something? And what is proof? When does it cross the line between, I'm not sure, and then boom, yep, it is, right? Well, that's kind of a decision that each person has to make for themselves. And I've thought about this a lot because, you know, for example, Kensington Rune Stone or the Newport Tower or any of these out-of-place artifacts that we have looked at on our show, not all of them are real, but the Rune Stone definitely is authentic. The tower was built by the Templars in 1400 or so, and many of these other artifacts are authentic. If I were to argue them in a court of law, and here's the thing, Ryan, I testify a lot in court. I know the process, right? And I know what the standard of evidence is to convince a judge, an arbitrator, or a jury to, you know, come down on my side. But it seems to me that the academic world that has decided that the Kensington Rune Stone, for example, is a hoax, right? What criteria have they used to reach that conclusion? Well, the academics I'm talking about are people that are in the humanities disciplines, like archaeology, history, anthropology. These are not hard science disciplines. And one of the things that I see constantly, mistakes that are made by these people, is they talk about science and they talk about scientific method, but they don't practice it. And, you know, it's funny because we have all this evidence in geology, in language, runes, dialect, grammar, history, that all supports authenticity of, say, the Kensington Rune Stone, and therefore is authentic. And if that's the conclusion that I have reached, and I have, what a lot of people don't understand is that there can't possibly be any evidence to support the contrary because it doesn't exist, right? How can there be evidence that it's a hoax when it's not a hoax? And that might be confusing to some people, but that's actually the way it works. And I constantly ask people to say, well, I don't believe the Rune Stone is real. Well, the question of authenticity isn't a matter of faith or what you believe. It's a matter of evidence. And so when I talk to these academics, they don't talk about evidence. They just tell me what they think. Is that true? Well, this is what
it's opinion.
First, well, it's opinion, and hey, everybody's got an opinion, right? But you know, it's just, to me, it's, well, there's more going on here than just that. But it's mind-boggling sometimes when I have to argue with these people, and I just say, look, the rock told me it was real, therefore the language, the runes, the dialect all had to be out there. I went and looked for it, and I found it. And all they did was get mad at me. So it's mind-boggling. But again, I'm going back to the question that one of the earlier questions is, well, what evidence do you have to support it? And how much evidence does it take to reach a final conclusion? What is truth, and who decides that? That's a fascinating question itself.
And then you're also going to get into what's something called best evidence rule. So there's evidence, but then it's the best evidence possible. So I appreciate what you say about the academics, because I'm a college graduate. I'm not a university. I don't have degrees in university, but I'm doing all these things that in my community, at least in the Canadian culture, we have this academic side in ufology that believe that because they've gone to school for these degrees, and that they are entitled to have this opinion. And they've written these books about these UFO sightings that have happened in Canada over the years, and they talk about these RTMP documents, they talk about all these things, but none of them have done field work, and none of them have actually investigated it. So when I started coming out saying, hey, I have the same documents, and I'm looking at them and I'm investigating them, they started to attack me. And I later discovered through investigation that the reason may be because that affects their work. And they actually never retrieved the documents themselves. So I've actually been able to accomplish receive the documents that are available, which they claim that they have had. And now I'm going through them. And because I'm not a scholar or an academic, it frightens them. So keep doing what you're doing. And like you said, it's the evidence is important, but the best evidence, like you said, is subjective. But I guess for the collective, we really want to hear from the government, yes, these things are real. But the thing is, I'm not in a hurry for that. And the whole reason why we've created the Experiencer Support Association is not to push disclosure, but to prepare for what happens after.
Right.
Because you're going to have a lot of people that are happy about this environment, but you're also going to have a group of people that are scared and frightened and not going to know who to turn to. And you're going to have this plethora of people who are unqualified to handle mental health and things like that as well. So, and again, the academics who just research, no field work. That's what I wanted to get to. Field work is important, and that's what you do as well. And that's
field work is everything. I always say to people, don't find anything sitting around talking about it. You got to get off your ass and get out there and do the work. And look, academia is a wonderful thing, and I don't want to pigeonhole all academics, and paint them with the same brush, because that's not fair and it's not true. But there are a lot of them that are out there that feel that because they have those letters after their name, that everything they say is the gospel, and it's just not true. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how many degrees you have. If you don't have the evidence, you got nothing. And so believe me, this is my business. I do it every day. I've done forensics, for 35 plus years. And, and I have people call me a pseudoscientist, and I'm like, really? I do it every day. Didn't assign me. The government didn't assign me to work on the Pentagon because I don't know what I'm talking about. At least I hope they didn't, but yet I get people that attack me and call me names. But you're doing something when if they can't attack your evidence, the next best thing is you attack the person, right? Because if you bring them down, then you bring down their research too. It's an age-old technique. So if that happens, Brian, you're doing a good job.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, there's no friends in this place, trust me. But it's
well, I'll be your friend, and we're brothers, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's brother in arms. Here we go.
There you go.
All right, well, guys, we got like 8 minutes left before we hit the 2-hour mark, and we'll have to end it. If anybody else has any questions, ask them now. Otherwise, I'm gonna throw another question in here. We normally talk about our research and stuff on this podcast too, but I kind of wanted to refrain from that for this episode. I kind of leaked into it a little bit, but But at the end, this one question that I really had is I'm curious about your opinion on a connection between ufology, paranormal activity, and perhaps a psychogenic psychic ability connection. So do you think that these phenomenons are separate, but sticking to the unity concept, do you think it's possible that they're connected, and if not one and the same, and if investigating them simultaneously, which is what we do, if that will kind of give us a better, a more efficient result or explanation for the phenomenon in a whole, or should we ufologists measure ufology separate from paranormal, and then, like, should there be a divine, or should the these pseudosciences, as you say, be working together?
Well, I think it's obvious that everything in this world is connected, right? And not just the world around us, but through time as well. And I think that you should always keep your head up and eyes open to all of these phenomena. If you're looking into one specific area, you always have to sort of keep things open, that something else may come in, because I can't tell you how many times I've been researching something, and then all of a sudden something else will come along that connects to it, that takes you into a different direction. And then eventually it all circles back and comes back to where you started. So I think what that tells that there is, and that there are these connections with this various subject matter, the paranormal, the ET stuff, and who knows what else. So I just think be open and just be mindful that there are other things that are going on, and probably will dovetail with whatever it is that you have in front of you. It just always happened to me, and I think the same would be true with what you're dealing with.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, what I'm finding is that compare and contrast, that overlap is giving me, when I measure them separately, that overlap is giving me a more defined understanding of what the phenomenon is, the entire system, as I could say. And with that, I'm learning more. I'm learning that some things that are called paranormal are not paranormal or ET, but technically the word paranormal means not normal. So ufology and UFOs is technically paranormal. But for some reason, the academics in ufology hate being associated with paranormal because it can't be proven. But if you drop the label and you look at the characteristics, just like as in your research, when you drop the labels and you look at the movement of the people, whether you call them Templars or something else, or Masons, our missions are the same. Our all those things, that comparison is what's important. And that, to me, is why I think the evidence is here. It's just this Babel. Remember the Tower of Babel? We were separated because we had the answers, and we're speaking different languages. But if we all come back and speak the same language that we spoke at the beginning, we'll have the answers again. I don't think it was lost. Well, that's another Masonic thing. The lost key, or the lost word, right?
The lost word.
Yeah.
Well, it comes full circle, like I think everything does. Just like this has come full circle, hasn't it?
Yeah. No, exactly. We have to work. We have to work together, and maybe that symbol in those camps. That's the whole part of it. That might be the symbolism behind it. So one last question from UFOs on the Level. This must be an important question because he's asked it 100 times, and I've skipped it. Sorry. Why the latest push for disclosure from the government? So we're getting, I guess where he's coming from is that we're getting this huge impact of disclosure recently. So why all of a sudden?
Well, I think, and I don't want to sound fatalistic about this, but I think we're coming to a tipping point. I mentioned procession. I mentioned prophecies. I mentioned how predictions were made that this would be a very turbulent time. And, there are some things that, are not fun to talk about, but they need to be talked about. We have a lot of people on the planet, and a lot of these people are not being good stewards of the planet. And frankly, we're destroying our planet. We're not taking good care of our home. I mean, this is our home. And I think more people need to think that way. I think we need to be more responsible about how we all live our lives, about how we treat each other. We just have a lot of work to do. And I think this goes back to the whole ET thing, that they are looking at us as almost like children that have been misbehaving, and we need to get our act together. We need to shape up. And I think that part of what's happening with the government, and this isn't coming from Holden, this is just my own thoughts on this, is that we're at a point here where if we keep going the way we're going, it's not going to end well. The future doesn't look as bright as it could. We need to move off of fossil fuels. Some people will say that's a political thing. It's not. Fossil fuels build up carbon dioxide, which is not good for our planet, period. And we have other means of energy that do not produce waste. The water molecule can be split and hydrogen can be used, and the byproduct is water. So that's just one form of technology that we've had for many years. But the oil cartels are not going to loosen their grip. The money is more important than taking care of our planet. And that's a problem. So people need to be informed. And I think that maybe the government coming out and talking about ETs is going to make people sit back and realize and ask themselves some questions. Maybe we're not the end all. If there are other beings out there, what does that mean for us here on Earth? And, one of the things that I think is very important is there's nothing to be afraid of. They're not going to kill us. They're not going to conquer us and enslave us. If they wanted to do that, they would have done it a long time ago. So they want to live with us and they want to see us succeed, but they also believe in free will. That means it's up to us. And so I think the government reaching out and asking for people to help with this and to let people know the ETs are there, maybe it'll be a wake-up call for people to reach a little deeper inside of themselves and find that better person that we all can be, and learn to trust, love, and depend on each other. That's what needs to happen, because we're all here on this planet. This is our home. We need to take care of it and take care of each other. And hopefully, I think that's probably the end result of what the government would like to see. I really do think that. A lot of people don't trust the government, but hey, the people that make up the government are humans too. They live here too. So I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah, and I've always said to myself too, like, if the government is lying, like, we have to understand why they're lying. So maybe there's that why question is important. So I believe they're telling us the truth. They're not telling us the whole truth, but then we need to ask why they're not telling us the whole truth. Because we have done the research, we have looked at some of the information that's been provided, and we have drawn some conclusions. But there must be a reason why they're not giving us the information when we ask for it. And everything, like you said, everything progressively, this little piece of information from you, maybe these declassified documents that were given to me, all of this is part of generating a conversation to create awareness on a global effort, so that way more people are open to it, so that when the answer is given, the reaction is more positive than negative, because we don't want to have a negative reaction to the answer. Right. So why are they withholding? Because we as a human race have proven, especially with COVID at the very beginning, that we are unable to handle a crisis. So, now we're finally getting on top of it, but at what cost, right?
Yeah.
Some of that could have been a galactic test, to see if we're ready to handle it, and maybe they've dialed it back. There's so many things.
There sure are, and I think this is, frankly, a lot of fun. It's a whole new world for me to investigate and to learn about and to share with people. And I consider it a great privilege and an honor to be part of this, and I'm going to do my best. That's all I can tell you.
And I appreciate you spending your time with me tonight. I really do, and our listeners as well. Lots of feedback, lots of comments, and we can chat more after the show if you want. But before then, I'd like you to tell everybody where they could find you. If you got anything going on, any new, like your new book, like where they could find it, anything that could help support your work and your mission, lay it out. Where can people find you?
Great. Well, I always tell people that they can go to my blog, which is scottwolteranswers.blogspot.com. And I've got a bunch of blogs there from when I was doing the show, and other blogs about various things. It's been up there for several years. And if you have a specific question, go ahead and post it, and I'll respond. That's one place they can find me. The other thing is, if people are interested in reading any of my books or Janet's book, go to www.hookedx.com, spelled HOOKEDX.com. And all books bought off my website will sign and personalize. So that's a little bonus if you go there. It costs $1 or $2 more, but I think it's worth it. And as far as new projects, oh my God, I just got back from being on the road for over 2 weeks, and I am in the midst of some Templar research that we are going to be bringing forward in the near future that will blow your mind. That's all I can tell you. It has been, the last week, just been a mind bender, and just stay tuned because it's fantastic.
It's new information, never been seen.
Brand new information. Yep. And we are literally just starting to work on some new material, some new documents that came to us recently. And it's a lot. It's going to take a while to get through it, but we know what the old story is, and it's just incredible. And these are legitimate original documents that tell the most amazing story you've ever heard. It's a Templar story, and it's in the vein of the work that I've been doing, but it just goes so far, so deep, so vast, and it's incredible.
What does it change?
And there's treasure too.
Okay. Does the story change anything? Any philosophy? Any already written story? I'm prying here.
As far as what I have already published, all it does is reinforce that and just take it much further. Yeah, everything that we've done was based on hard science, evidence, and facts, and logic. And now we're getting the documentation to support this research. And it turns out we were right. We were on the right track pretty much the whole time.
Good. That's great to hear. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Scott. I'll talk to you a little bit after our outro there. And for those of you guys that haven't paid attention, this is your last chance to hashtag Tessa merch because next week, April 1st, we will do a raffle, $50 gift card for the paranormalhanger.com. And so you need to comment in YouTube right now. And I'll put the comment right here to show you as an example. Hashtag Tessa merch. This comment I'm putting in right there. And that will enter you into the draw. And Chantel will pick the winner next week. And I will announce that. And thanks for watching. Keep your eyes in the sky. And Scott, thank you so much.
All right, Ryan. I had a good time. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did too. All right, heed the world. Tonight's episode was brought to you by the Paranormal Hangar, the official merchandising store of the Experiencer Support Association. Head over to theparanormalhangar.com and browse our inventory. We have branded mugs, mouse pads, tote bags, and so much more. All proceeds go back into the organization, and if you are a Patreon member, you will get a discount code for all of your purchases. Remember, this conversation isn't over, just the free version. We will dive even deeper on patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes in the sky, and say it with me. Heed the world. Good night, everybody.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, where together, my friends, we own the night. On our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a place called the SOR Sightlines Report. All of our investigations and people who inquire are turned over to TESSA, the Experiencer Support Association. Ryan Stacy and his crew, what I like about them, they're independent. They're not working for anybody, and they want answers. We want answers for our listeners and people who inquire as well about their experiences. It's a great tandem, and we love being teamed up with TESSA. If you haven't heard of us before, that's okay. We'd love to earn your listening ears. Join us 9:06 Pacific Time, 12:06 a.m. Eastern for 3 hours of live entertainment, 7 days a week.
We are the ones in the dark. We are the first on the scene. We are the last to leave. We will counsel you. We will comfort you. We will save your life. We are the unsung